Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel for another tutorial. This tutorial is going to be a two-part episode for a matching set. So let's get into it. I'll be using 4 different shades of Line Brand's anti-pilling yarn, and all of these yarns are classified as a medium weight 4 yarn with a suggested hook size of a 5 mil. And although the suggested hook size is a 5 mil hook, I'm actually going to be using a 4.5. And at the very end, I'll be using a darning needle. To start, I'm going to create my slip knot. Next, I need to create a chain that can wrap around my bust but not fully enclose it. Although my bust measures about 33 inches around, I'm actually going to chain to about 27 inches long. I ended up chaining a total of 90 stitches, and although I can't get all my work to fit on camera, you can see here that it reaches to about 27 inches long. After my 90th stitch, I'm going to chain one more for turning. And starting in the second stitch from the hook, I'll place 1 single crochet down my entire chain. So I'll skip that first stitch and enter into my second. Pull up a loop with 2 on, yarn over and pull through both. And there's a single crochet. I'm just going to repeat that process for the entire row, placing 1 single crochet into each stitch. And because our chain is so long, this is going to take a little bit of time, but just be patient and work your way through each stitch. And once I have this row done, I'll meet you back at the end of the row. And here for the very last stitch in my row, I'm going to finish my single crochet, chain 1 and turn my work. To start row 2, I'm going to repeat the same process that I used in row 1. So after my chain 1, I'll place 1 single crochet into the top of each stitch for the entire row. So again, I'm just working with single crochets, nothing fancy. I'm simply trying to build up my rows for this pattern. From here on out, the only trick is changing out my colors. And I'll meet you back here at the end of my row. Alright, and I'm back here again at the very end of my row. I'm going to pick up my last stitch, make sure you guys don't forget it, and finish out my row. And from here I can chain 1 and turn my work again. For rows 3 and 4, I'll be repeating the same exact pattern that I've shown you guys for row 1 and 2. So after my chain 1, again I'll be working with regular single crochets, placing 1 single crochet at the top of each stitch. No increases and no decreases. Just adding on top of what we have already. And I'll meet you back here to show you how to complete your 4th row. Okay, so I'm back here again at the end of my 4th row. I'm going to finish up my second to last stitch. So I have 1 stitch remaining here. And here's where I'm going to switch out my colors. This next yarn that I'll be using is in the shade Honey. I'm going to work the first part of my stitch and pull up my loop. And before I pull through my very last stitch, I'm going to add on my second color. I've already dropped my cream color and I'm going to pull through my Honey shade. And I've already cut off my cream color and left a pretty long tail to work with so we can hide our end in our work. To start my 5th row, I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. So for my 5th row, I'm going to bring my 2 ends with me and help to weave them in. I'm going to go into my first stitch and make my single crochet. So looking here for my next stitch. Placing 1 single crochet into the top of each stitch. At the end of my 5th row, I'm going to finish my last stitch, chain 1 and turn my work. For my 6th row, I'll continue to use my Honey shade and create 1 more row of single crochet. When I'm using my brown shades, I'm going to work 2 rows of single crochet at a time, and I'll come back at the end of row 6 to change out my new shade. All right, so I'm back here again at the end of my 6th row, and I have one more stitch left. And here's where I'll switch out to my new color in the shade Adobe. To finish my very last stitch, I'm gonna go in and pull up a loop. And with 2 on my hook before I finish out my stitch, I'm gonna add on my new color to my hook and pull through my stitch. And now I have my new color on top. At the end of my row, I can chain 1 and turn my work. For my next 2 rows, so rows 7 and 8, I'll be working with my new Adobe color. And again, I'll just be working rows of plain single crochets. And don't forget to bring your tails with you to tuck them in and hide them in your work. I'm gonna go into my first stitch, pull up my loop, and make my single crochet. And now I'll just continue to work down my row. So once I've finished a total of 2 rows with this medium brown color, I'll meet you back at the end of the row to change out with my very last brown. I'm back one last time at the end of my 8th row here. I have 1 stitch left. And I'm switching out to the very last color that I'll be using in the shade Nutmeg. I'm gonna go into my very last stitch, pull up a loop, and to finish out that stitch, I'm gonna add on my new color and pull through that stitch. And from here I can chain my 1 and turn my work. From here I'll add 2 rows in our new shade of brown. So at this point, I'm just repeating the same pattern from the previous 2 rows. And as you guys can see here, I'm just making a plain old rectangle, no increases and no decreases, just adding 1 stitch on top of each other and working upwards. Okay, so I've reached the end of my 10th row here, and I'm gonna finish my very last stitch. And I have my very first cream color here ready to go. I'm gonna add it onto my hook and pull through that loop. With my new cream color added on, I'm actually going to be repeating the same pattern from the previous 2 rows. So I'm just going to work the next 2 rows with the cream color and switch out to my browns and work 2 rows of each with those as well. Alright guys, so I'm back here again for the very last time, and as you can see, I have finished up repeating that pattern. And as I mentioned earlier, after my 2 rows of cream, I switched to each color of brown for 2 more rows, and then back to my cream color one last time for a total of 4 rows. And by bringing the ends of my work here to meet in the middle, this is pretty much how the top is going to sit on my body. And after I weave in my 2 little ends here, all that's left is to create the halter neck for this top. And lastly, to create the tie straps, I'm going to start off with my slip knot. So I'm just going to begin chaining. And I think I'm going to aim to create a chain that's roughly 2.5 to 3 feet long. I would rather create a chain that was way too long that I could shorten than end up with a chain that's not long enough for my neck. I finished up my chain, and I think I actually made it more towards 4 feet long. I didn't really count how many stitches it took to create the chain. I'm just kind of estimating, and keep in mind also that your tie has a little bit of stretch. I'm going to find the very center of my tie strap and leave it here at the bottom. I have one end of my chain strung through my darning needle, and now I'm just going to weave it back and forth all along this edge of the bandeau.